Is it fair to say that the exponential increase we've seen over the last decade, 15 years perhaps, of what corporations, banks are having to pay for legal advice when they look for it outside, is it fair to say that the billable hour is at least partly to blame for that?
Well, I think the billable hour has a major portion of that. Certainly, I think that law firms are going to look back in the last decade as the good old days, and they're going to see that because they may well be the good old days. I don't think we're going to see an era like that going forward. I think we're in the midst of what amounts to a fundamental change in the profession, and it's
a watershed even.
Well, perhaps so. I mean, what we're seeing is it's revolutionary, but in an evolutionary way. We're seeing incremental changes, but they're happening rapidly, and that's moving. And over the next few years, I think when we will look back and say this was a time of significant change, and the world will be very different. And I think you will see firms. Many will have to change their business model. I mean, a number of firms developed, became highly leveraged, and by that, not in a borrowing sense, but in the sense that
personnel sense,
and would have significant number of associates doing a significant number of billable hours and required to have 1,500, 2,000, 2,500, whatever their numbers were. And that's the way they made money. It was just bill more time. And that era is gone.
So it must have frightened you, I guess, representing the body of in-house lawyers now, when you've seen, over the past 10 years, Clifford Chance, Rogers and Welch, Jones Day, Sherman and Sterling even, all these firms massively expanding around the world. I mean, has that frightened you? I mean, how have you viewed that almost exponential growth of these international law firms?
Well, I wouldn't say frightened. I mean, I think those firms, and they're all outstanding firms, they were making efforts to create a firm that could serve clients that do business in an international environment, that do business globally. And so I don't see that as frightening, or the ability to serve a client in multiple jurisdictions. In fact, that I think is potentially great service. What I think frightened us, or what frightened the members of ACC, was the exponential growth of their legal bills. And those were that's what frightened them.
In order to support this massive international infrastructure?
Well, again, I'm going to disagree with you slightly. I don't know that it's aimed to support the massive, the international expansion. What it did serve, and one of the most perverse perverse measurements that developed in the United States was the measurement of profit per partner. And firms were evaluated on profit per partner. And so the leverage of associates and the growth in that area, much of that was driven in order to support the profit per partner metric.
I think it's true to say, though, Fred, isn't it, that we've already said we've reached something of a watershed. I personally don't see partners in law firms enjoying boom years like they have done with massive profits and everything, and I think they're going to have to get used to earning less money. And I mean, are you seeing it like that?
I think that we're going to see that. Certainly, firms that operate under their current business models and that don't change, I believe most of those partners are going to have to get used to making less money. Although at least the initial figures that we've seen, even through all that is happening right now, the profit per partner number has not gone down that much. Part of the reason that has been sustained, at least in the short term, has been through layoffs, through cutbacks, but I don't think they'll be able to, you can only cut so much. I don't think they'll be able to sustain that. And again, I think firms need to take a look at their business model. And we certainly are not adverse to people making a profit, indeed people making a good profit. If you have a product or if you have a service that justifies that, and I think, and that earns it. And I think and we're seeing firms that are developing in alternative ways and that are doing business in different ways, perhaps more efficiently, better use of technology, better use of knowledge management, better use of their people. In those settings, there's a tremendous opportunity for firms to create sustainable and substantial profits. And we have no objection to that. Our objection to is the value received by the client and what they're paying for.
Yes, indeed.
Or the lack of it.
Yeah, I'm hearing as I do my rounds in Europe a lot being said about knowledge management, both in-house and in the law firms, and it appears to me that this might have been something that both sides have missed a little bit, that every time we have a case we want to reinvent the wheel, don't we? And whereas we probably have that knowledge actually in-house.
Well, I think either in-house or in the firm, by in-house or within the organization,
Yes,
be either in the firm or in the law department. Although I would say my sense of it is that people like Richard Susskind and some other folks over here seem to be a bit ahead of where we have been in the States. And again, my sense is some of the British firms, and perhaps I'm not as familiar with the firms on the continent, but knowledge management, the use of technology, and the recognition of the changes that need to come. Again, Richard's book, The End of the Lawyers, have been prescient, I think he has been. And so you're a little here, being since we're in London, I would say you seem to be a bit ahead of us than
right,
in the States.
in terms of technologically managing.
In terms of making that and,
Yeah.
and the knowledge management and the reuse.
Yeah. I'm sure it's something we're going to hear a lot more about over the next year or two, because it can certainly help the client keep down the size of the bills.
Well, and it also, what it does, and it's important that every matter isn't unique. Every matter isn't strategic. And much of the work it's operational. It's very, very important work, legal work that is done for a company, not strategic, not necessarily unique. And so knowledge management, project management, the ability to budget, all of these factors become very, very important. And a law firm, even though law firms or attorneys are professionals, law firms will find that they have to operate more in a more business-like manner. And also what you'll find, I think, and what we'll see going forward is that a much greater focus on data, metrics, and information and the use of that information to drive decisions.